Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is smoking weed. Maybe it's you. And the last time it happened, you probably didn't think twice about it. You lit up, leaned back, and that was that. But what you did, that single act, is one of the oldest things a human being can do. It's older than writing, older than money, older than most of the religions that currently have opinions about it. And here's the part nobody ever tells you. The first humans who encountered cannabis weren't looking for a high. They weren't looking for medicine, they were looking for rope. Think about that for a second. Archaeologists excavating an ancient Neolithic site in Taiwan found pottery dating back roughly 10,000 years. The same moment humans were just beginning to invent agriculture. The pottery had hemp cord markings pressed into its surface. A stone beater used to pound hemp fiber was found nearby. The Columbia History of the World records it plainly. The weaving of hemp fiber began 10,000 years ago at approximately the same time as pottery making and before metalworking. One of humanity's first crops wasn't wheat, it wasn't rice, it was weed. And for thousands of years after that, that's all it was. Rope, clothing, fishing nets, oil, food. The plant was everywhere because it was useful for everything. You could wear it, sail with it, ride on it, and eat the seeds when things got desperate. Nobody had figured out yet that one part of the plant, when you set it on fire and breathe deeply, did something completely different to your brain. So, when exactly did they figure that out? In 2700 BC, a Chinese emperor named Shen Nong, known today as the father of Chinese medicine, spent his reign testing 365 herbs on himself, every single one, personally. He ate them, drank them, and inhaled them, recording the results. According to legend, he also died doing this from a plant that ruptured his intestines before he could take the antidote. The man literally gave his life to science. Cannabis made his list. He called it Ma Fen, and what he wrote about it is extraordinary. His pharmacopoeia recorded, "Taking much of it may make one behold ghosts and frenetically run about. Protracted taking may enable one to communicate with the spirit light." That is a 4,700-year-old trip report written by an emperor filed under medicine. He classified cannabis as a superior herb prescribed for pain, gout, and rheumatism. And the Chinese brewed it into tonics and powders with the same seriousness modern doctors give antibiotics. Cannabis in ancient China was not a vice. It was infrastructure. But here's where the story stops being legend and starts being science. In 2019, a team from the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Max Planck Institute published a paper in the journal Science Advances. They had excavated a 2,500-year-old cemetery called Jirzhankal, sitting at 10,000 feet elevation on the Pamir Plateau in western China, right along the ancient Silk Road. Inside the tombs, they found 10 wooden braziers containing heated stones with clear signs of burning. When they ran the residue through gas chromatography mass spectrometry, the same technique used in modern forensic labs, they found cannabinol, the active compound in cannabis, in 9 out of 10 braziers. But here's the detail that changes everything. The THC concentration in those plants was significantly higher than in wild cannabis. These weren't people who stumbled on a random plant. They were specifically seeking out or cultivating high-potency strains for use in funeral rituals. At 10,000 feet, the altitude stresses cannabis plants and forces them to produce more THC. The people of Jirzhankal knew this. They went up the mountain on purpose. Lead archaeobotanist Robert Spengler called the findings a solid, unequivocal data point for actual use of this plant as a drug. This is the oldest direct physical evidence of cannabis smoking ever found. And the Greek historian Herodotus had described the exact same ritual 2,500 years ago without a single laboratory. In his histories, writing around 440 BC, He recorded how the Scythians, nomadic warriors of Central Asia, would crawl under felt mats, throw hemp onto red-hot stones, and inhale the fumes until they shouted aloud with pleasure. In 2013, archaeologist Andrei Belinsky excavated a Scythian burial mound in the Caucasus Mountains of southern Russia. Hidden beneath a layer of clay, he found a chamber containing 7 pounds of solid gold objects. When criminologists analyzed the black residue inside the gold vessels, it tested positive for both cannabis and opium. Herodotus, writing with no chemistry lab, had gotten it exactly right. Archaeologists also found a 2,500-year-old mummified Scythian woman in the Altai Mountains, buried with a container of cannabis beside her body. She had been ill. The plant was there to help. While this was happening in Central Asia, India had taken a different approach entirely. Instead of burying cannabis with the dead, they made it holy for the living. The Atharva Veda, one of the 4 sacred Hindu texts compiled between 2000 and 1400 BC, lists cannabis as one of 5 sacred plants. The actual verse reads, "May the hemp and kuka grass and panga and barley release us from anxiety." The Vedas call it a source of happiness, a joy giver, and a liberator, and say that a guardian angel lives in its leaves. According to a 2023 peer-reviewed study published in PMC, the earliest mention of bhang, cannabis leaves ground with milk and spices, describes it as the food of gods and a gift. The god Shiva, one of Hinduism's principal deities, became known as the Lord of Bhang. The legend says he fell asleep under a cannabis plant, woke up, ate the leaves out of curiosity, and was immediately rejuvenated. Millions of his devotees have been honoring that preference ever since. At Maha Shivaratri, one of Hinduism's most sacred festivals, worshippers still stay up through the night praying and drinking bhang. This isn't a footnote in history. This is thousands of years of unbroken religious tradition around a single plant. And then there was Egypt. The Ebers Papyrus, written around 1550 BC and considered the world's oldest complete medical textbook, records cannabis under the Egyptian name Shem Shemet. Hemp ground in honey to treat uterine inflammation, cannabis leaves in pure oil as an ointment, a recipe for sore eyes using cannabis ground with celery left in dew overnight, then washed over the patient's eyes in the morning. 4 separate ancient Egyptian medical papyri, spanning 400 years of history, all mention cannabis. Egyptologist Lisa Monesha at the University of Copenhagen confirmed the references. Cannabis residue was even found inside mummy wrappings and burial chambers. Someone in ancient Egypt decided, "If I'm crossing into eternity, this plant is coming with me." From Egypt, the plant moved west. Dioscorides, the Greek physician working under Rome in the 1st century AD, documented cannabis for joint pain and earaches. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder called it a laughing weed. The physician Galen described Roman elites eating toasted cannabis seeds as an after-dinner dessert, writing that large amounts fill the head with a warm and drug-like vapor. The Romans ate it. They called it dessert. Then came the Islamic Golden Age, and cannabis walked straight into a theological loophole. The Quran explicitly forbids alcohol. Cannabis is not mentioned, and wherever there is ambiguity in divine law, humans will find the gap. The first records of hashish appear between 632 and 900 AD. The great physician Avicenna included cannabis in his Canon of Medicine in 1025 AD, recommending it for gout, edema, and severe headaches. Sufi mystics used it to reach states of spiritual transcendence, bypassing clergy entirely. Communities built entire gardens in Egypt, where hashish was cultivated and shared until 1266 AD, when the Egyptian king Al-Zahir Babar banned it, destroyed the gardens, and threatened anyone caught with it with prison, and, according to the historical record, having their teeth pulled out. The punishment for cannabis in 13th century Egypt was deteething. And then there's the word assassin. The Nizari Ismailis, known as the Hashashin, were a religious military order founded in 1090 AD. Their fortress was called Alamut, Eagle's Nest, in what is now Iran. Marco Polo, visiting 150 years after the order's founding, claimed their leader, Hassan-i-Sabah, used hashish to create visions of paradise and control his followers. The word hashishin became assassin in European languages. Cannabis gave English one of its most dramatic words. Except most modern historians agree, the story is almost certainly propaganda. The actual archives of Alamut contain no mention of hashish. The sect was known for scholars and engineers. The story was spread by their enemies, then recorded by a traveler who showed up a century and a half too late. Medieval fake news. And it worked perfectly for 900 years. Meanwhile, in Europe, hemp was literally holding civilization together. Medieval Italian city-states ruled the seas with hemp rope. King Henry VIII, the man famous for beheading his wives, passed a law in 1533 requiring every English farmer with 60 acres to dedicate a quarter acre to hemp or face a fine. When Columbus sailed in 1492, his ships were rigged with hemp rope, sealed with hemp caulking, his sails made of hemp canvas. Cannabis didn't just discover America, it carried the ship. By 1850, cannabis was listed in the United States Pharmacopoeia as an approved treatment for neuralgia, cholera, and dozens of other conditions. Eli Lilly sold it. Park, Davis, now Pfizer, sold it. Bristol Myers Squibb sold it. Victorian doctors prescribed it for insomnia and inflammation. For 90 years, it was simply medicine. Then, in 1936, a film called Reefer Madness depicted cannabis turning teenagers into murderers and suicidal maniacs. The following year, the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 imposed a tax so punitive no legal sale was possible. The American Medical Association formally opposed the bill. It passed anyway. A plant that had been in the U.S. Pharmacopoeia for 90 years was reclassified as having no medical value, placed alongside heroin in the most restricted category of controlled substances. The same plant that Chinese emperors prescribed, that Hindu gods endorsed, that Egyptian doctors ground into honey, that Scythian warriors burned in solid gold vessels along the ancient Silk Road, that Columbus sailed across the Atlantic on, that American pharmaceutical giants sold for nearly a century. Dangerous, suddenly, officially, overnight. Today, more than 150 million people use cannabis regularly. Scientists with gas chromatography are finding its chemical fingerprint in 2,500-year-old funeral braziers. Genomic studies now push its cultivation history past 10,000 years. And the debate around it is louder than ever. Just remember, every argument happening right now, every law, every passionate opinion, humans have been having that exact debate least 3,000 years. The Taoists and the Confucians argued about it in 1000 BC. The Sufis and Sunni authorities argued about it in 1200 AD. The doctors and politicians argued about it in 1937. The plant simply waited. Older than every empire that tried to control it, more patient than every government that tried to ban it. It was here before your laws. It will probably be here after.